everybody, welcome to Conversations by Water. My name is Paola Spitia. I'm one of the creatives at Ola'pi Creative, and today we are going to be exploring mindfulness with our dear friend Shelly here. Shelly is going to, why don't you go ahead and give us an introduction.
Sure.
And let us know what mindfulness is and how your world is all about mindfulness.
Sure, so my name is Shelly Tygielski. I am the Chief Mindfulness Officer of YURU Meditation and Mindfulness. YURU stems from, it rhymes with guru, and the tagline where it came from is because I preach and my mantra is that people should forego the guru and become a YURU, which essentially means that we are all our own gurus and that we shouldn't just kind of put all of our eggs in the basket of one guru. Nobody can find all the answers for us. We kind of maybe can glean some insight from them, but in the end, really, we are our own gurus. So what YURU does is we go around and work with different corporations, with public schools, private schools, athletic organizations, and different nonprofits in helping to bring mindfulness into their culture, providing them with tools to help with things like emotional regulation, and just help them go through life as needed. It's something that is incredibly effective, it's incredibly portable and affordable, and I'm trying to just make it more accessible to as many people as possible.
I love that. So I actually found out about you through another friend, Kimmy, and she kept telling me that you were doing this beach meditation on Sunday mornings over in Hollywood Beach.
Yep.
And it sounds magical, and a lot of that is because, you know, I'm drawn to water. As you all know, there's a whole thing that's called Blue Mind Movement, and there's a lot of scientific research that shows that when we spend time by water, especially in the way that Shelly guides these meditations, it actually ends up affecting us much more deeply than a lot of other elements than spending time outside. How did that come about? When did you start doing those meditations?
So I started those meditations in November of 2015 on a really blustery, windy day. Actually, I had a girlfriend that was going through a really trying time. She had just been diagnosed with cancer, and she, for a long time, had been wanting to learn how to meditate. And so a bunch of friends in our group decided that we would just meet. Hollywood Beach seemed like a central location. It was all really by happenstance. Yeah. So the 12 of us met on the beach that day. It was too windy to sit on the actual beach. We wound up sitting like closer to the parking lot, really. But nonetheless, we were able to meditate, and I was able to kind of lead them through a 30-minute practice. And I figured if we could do it here, we could really do it anywhere, right? In a chemo ward, in a school, in a conference room, wherever it may be. And so we enjoyed our time together so much, and we decided we would meet again the following week, and the following week, and the following week. And every week they would bring more friends, and they would bring more friends, and people started posting, and it just really grew organically, which is awesome. And it absolutely was not something that I kind of set out to do. I wish I would have thought of this wonderful idea and thought that it could become as big as it did, but to date, since November of 2015, we've had over 15,000 people meditate with us, which is incredible.
Wow.
And I only know based on, I guess, the numbers on our mailing list and the people that kind of sign up for a mailing list after they come, which is really cool. And so we have people that come every week, and we have people that come when they're in crisis, and we have people that, will come once in a while, and that's cool, because the whole point is that I'm trying to make sure that people understand that there's no right or wrong way to meditate, that these are skill sets and tools that you can take with you, and you don't have to come to the beach on Sunday to do it. It's just an opportunity to really build community. And as you mentioned, being at the beach is really key, because the ionization that occurs when we're near the salt water, the H2O and the salt's kind of throwing off all these extra ions. And so when you go to the mountains, you can go to these, and maybe actually here now there's all these kind of salt rooms and salt caves and salt suites that you can go and reap the same benefits that you get just by spending like 30 minutes at the beach, basically. It already calms your system down. And so and it's free. So, you know, what's a better way to kind of spend your Sunday morning than at the beach? You know, the worst case scenario is you still have all these thoughts, but you feel a little bit better and, you know, calmer, and you've met a few nice people who are like-minded.
Yeah, and there's another good point too about actually taking advantage of that fresh air off the water. I mean, in our daily lives, we're in Fort Lauderdale. We're actually in downtown Fort Lauderdale on the New River. So we're surrounded by buildings and traffic, and you know, we were just saying how bad the traffic is on 95 coming up and down. So we're constantly being bombarded by this really poor air quality.
Right.
And so when we spend time by water, it's really a very clarifying time for us.
Yeah.
And so to really be mindful of that and take advantage of this wonderful, natural, easy, healthy element that we have right here in our backyard.
Right, which is free and accessible to everyone. And that's really the key. I think the other thing that I've really tried to do is make sure that everywhere I do my meditations, they're either a very low barrier to entry in terms of cost, or they're entirely free. Like, that's really, really important to me, because I feel like the whole health and wellness movement in general has really been very much for the haves. If you look at the LOHAS, the Lifestyle of Health and Sustainability demographic. LOHAS, yeah.
LOHAS, okay.
Yeah. Without the A, but yeah, the LOHAS demographic, initially, like when you think of Whole Foods when it first started, it was almost unaffordable for the average person. Like you wouldn't go grocery shopping at Whole Foods. You'd go and you pick a few kind of key items, right? And so, but I think as it's just kind of this whole demographic has grown and people have now been demanding a lot more, it's really not just for the haves anymore, it's for the have-nots as well. And so I think mindfulness needs to be accessible to the single mom and to the person, you know, who's in Section 8 housing, or who's even homeless or going through a rough time or in recovery, or you know, those are the people that need it the most, and usually those are the people that have the least access to it. So it's really important to me make sure that the community is always a level playing field, and that you can meet people that you normally would never like intersect with anywhere else.
So what is it about mindfulness that is so important and that is so good for us?
So I will first of all say that you know, when people, I'm the least likely, I call myself an unlikely meditator. I'm the least likely person to meditate, because I'm just naturally wired to be very energetic and high strung. But I'm also very much a science-based person. I love when information and people tell me things that don't seem hokey to me and that they're backed by science. So the more that I started learning about meditation and the benefits of it scientifically speaking, and then I started really kind of learning more about mindfulness, and we could talk more about the difference between the two, the more excited I became about bringing it to people, because I thought, well, now the science has finally caught up with what I guess Buddhists have been trying to tell us for thousands of years, and now we can finally get to a point where people may start to listen, because their doctor is telling them to meditate, and their doctor is telling them, you know, to just take the 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, or just try to simplify their thought patterns. The goal really is to learn how to create these pattern interrupts throughout our life. Whether we're driving in traffic, whether we're having a conversation with somebody that might be unpleasant, whether we're parenting, whatever it is, really just that we do on a normal, in a normal day. And it's the ability to be able to choose to respond to something and not react to something. And it also allows us to, from a scientific perspective, tap into those natural pheromones, hormones, etc., that are just coursing through our body anyways, and through our brain, and be able to just sort of generate them naturally, right? Yeah. Without having to take any pills or having to subdue certain bad feelings or bad thoughts or hormones that we're kind of producing, if you will. And what happens to our brain is that, in the simplest terms, we're shrinking the areas of gray matter in our brain as we meditate that are affiliated with things like anger and fear, and anxiety, and all of these kind of bad physiological feelings, emotions, reactions that we have. And we're just growing the gray matter in our brain that essentially is affiliated with happiness and compassion and kindness and all of these wonderful things that we want to experience every single day.
So mindfulness, from also what I understand of it, is that, and I would like to discuss the difference between meditation and mindfulness.
Sure.
Meditation is a way to practice mindfulness.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I've heard a lot saying that once you quiet your brain is when you learn the most. And maybe we're only using like 15% of our actual brain capacity, and I believe meditation helps to activate some of those more sensory pieces.
So that's actually a myth. We actually use way more of our brain than we think we do. I know that there's been, I know that you know, you watch, like, people watch The Matrix or those types of movies, and they're like, well, the human being only uses 8% of their brain capacity, and that's actually not really true. It's at a time. We can use way more. It actually pokes a hole in the whole you know, multitasking functionality. People are so proud that they can multitask, and the reality is that, and it's a great book, you should pick it up, by Daniel Goleman, Altered Traits, which just really pokes a hole in that. It kind of debunks that whole thought process of I'm a great multitasker, and he basically is saying there is no such thing as multitasking. Your brain does not multitask. You cannot do two things at once. It's the rapidity, right? It's how rapidly we can switch from task to task. So certainly the more you're able to hyper-focus, in theory, the quicker you are able to interchange between tasks, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because it doesn't mean that you're actually being more efficient or effective, right? So the things that we're rewarding in this world today are not necessarily the things that are actually the most beneficial to us. But back to the difference between, I guess, mindfulness and meditation. Meditation is when you set aside a specific time or an allotted amount of time to just sit quietly without doing anything. And mindfulness is being able to be fully present without judgment and only be sort of hyper-focused on one task. So it's almost like mindfulness is meditation in motion, if you will, right? So it's being able to actually have this conversation with you without thinking of my to-do list.
Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly that. But it's even being able to do and bring joy, quite frankly, to the most mundane things, which, like washing a dish,
cleaning my house.
Right, exactly. You know, when you go to like a Buddhist retreat, when you go to a retreat, you know, one of the tasks they give you is they have you like raking leaves or like sweeping a floor, and you might look at that as the most mundane, horrible task, but you actually get to the point where after several days and weeks of doing that, you start looking forward to doing that. It's like a very gratifying, beautiful task to be able to do. And so that's sort of mindfulness in motion. Now, you mentioned when you spoke, you said that meditation is maybe about like trying to clear your mind, and actually,
right, like silent your mind.
Yeah, so that's also a myth that I want to debunk.
Okay,
so,
this is really good information.
Meditation is not about clearing your mind. I think we will never clear our mind. The average human being has between 70 to 80,000 thoughts per day. And 80% of those thoughts are repetitive thoughts.
Oh, sure.
So if we think that we're going to quiet our minds and that we're going to stop these 80,000 thoughts from entering our mind at any given moment, we're gravely mistaken. Meditation is about learning how to like coexist with our thoughts, how to coexist with them to the point where we can absolutely hyper-focus on one of them, and we can kind of allow everything else to become sort of this white noise, if you will. And it's the ability to just be fully present and hold like one thought. That's really like what it's about.
So a lot of people always struggle with that very initial phase of learning. I mean, even I guess it's a lifelong thing that you will always have these thoughts running through.
Sure.
So you're saying that beginners, don't be frustrated because it even happens to a lot of people. But what are some really neat things that you tell people to help them kind of refocus and truly take advantage of those benefits of meditation?
So it only takes 16 seconds for the brain to create a pattern interrupt. And so the first thing I tell people is you should really find 10 minutes a day to meditate. And when people look at me and they say, you don't understand, I don't have 10 minutes in my life, there's no way I could find 10 more minutes in my life or wake up earlier or what have you. I always look at them and say, well, if you don't have 10 minutes in your life, then you really need to reevaluate like your whole life. And that's a whole separate conversation.
Right.
But that being said, you know, in general, the best thing I can tell people to do, obviously, to really reap the benefits in the long term, like just the long term medically proven effects, scientifically proven effects, is to take the 10 minutes a day and to develop the habit. And so what I always tell people is the acronym RPM, which is Rise, P, Meditate. And just like you would never leave the house without brushing your teeth in the morning, it would just not even be a thought in your brain. You should never like leave the house without 10 minutes of meditation, because you aren't your best self, right? So you take the time to put makeup on, you take the time to shower, you take the time to brush your teeth, whatever it is that you do that's your habit in the morning. If you get into the habit of taking that 10 minutes first thing in the morning, rise, pee, meditate, then you can go about with the rest of your day, and you'll be a better person for it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing about Miracle Morning. Are you familiar with that concept?
Yeah.
The same thing, that meditation is one of the first things that you do to set yourself up for an amazing rest of your day.
Correct.
And that in combination with journaling and exercise and visioning.
Yeah.
Visualization exercises.
Sure.
I actually do a lot of that, and I
That's
love
awesome.
it. And you can totally feel a difference the days that you don't do that versus when you
Yeah, you're not as easily frazzled, and
Yeah.
your day just, things just roll off with you a lot easier.
How did you get into meditation? What was it for you how'd you find your way into this world?
So, again, always everything in my life, I guess I could say, is, people say there are no accidents, but really, like, everything was an accident. I actually was in graduate school, and no, let's rewind. So the quick story is that I first kind of was introduced to meditation when I was living in Geneva in Switzerland. I was working at a UN organization, and I was living in sort of this, I don't know, it was sort of like it wasn't a hostel, it was sort of like this student housing type thing, but for non-students, really for NGO workers who were getting paid like $2 a day.
Hey, I
Whatever,
know a lot of those.
it's all good. So, but I met a lot of really amazing, interesting people, and one of the couples that I met was this Japanese couple that used to practice Zen meditation every single morning. And I would wake up really early because I grew up as an Orthodox Jew, and I would wake up to say my morning prayers, and I would look at them, and I was sitting there with like a book, and they were just sitting there in silence, and I'm like, wait a minute, something's happening. And it seemed like they were less frazzled afterwards than I was. So I started conversing with them, and that sort of planted a seed. And when I went to graduate school, I decided to take just kind of audit a course with Tenzin Robert Thurman, who's Uma Thurman's dad, but also happens to be like the foremost like expert on Buddhism in the world. He's really like very well known for that. He's written a lot of books, and so I just kind of audited the class and sat in the back and learned a lot about meditation that way, and wound up going to things around New York City essentially that were happening at the Tibet House and at all these really cool places that were available to me because I was in New York City, and that's how I learned how to meditate. And I definitely like fell off the wagon when I got married and had a kid, and just life happens, and so it was a practice that I fell away from. And then I got really like sick, and I temporarily went blind because I have an autoimmune condition called uveitis.
Oh wow.
And so I was told that I would be blind by the time I was 40. And one of the things that my rheumatologist told me, and my ophthalmologist actually at Bascom Palmer said, you really can control your flare-ups if you can control your anxiety levels and your levels of stress, and you should really try meditation. And I'm like, ha 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 ha. Okay, so since then, it's been 12 years, and I have not missed a day, and I, make sure that I get my practice in every single day, even if it's 10 minutes. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's twice a day, but I don't beat myself up for it, and I can tell you that it's absolutely changed my life, so I've been wanting to herald that to everybody from the top of the mountain.
That's amazing. I mean, what a true example of mind over matter.
Yeah.
My father actually ended up also getting sick, and on a flight from Colombia back here to the States, he went deaf. He lost his hearing completely in his ear, and so that was like 25 years ago. And at first, it was just terrible tinnitus, the ringing in the ear constantly.
Yeah, sure.
And so we'd do a lot of golfing because that helped to keep his mind off of it. But ever since, it's because of his like mindful practice.
Sure.
My parents have also gone to Buddhist temples and done a lot of sweeping. But he totally says the same thing, that because of that, it's completely blocked out the sounds, and it's not something that he notices anymore. So it just health-wise, it's amazing.
Yeah,
the physical benefits you receive from being mindful, and then we see that reflected in how you work, in your workspace. You have a lot of corporate clients.
Yep.
And so what do they come to you looking for? So do they know mindfulness or meditation? Is it a new concept?
So there's usually like one person in the company that either fell upon mindfulness or practices mindfulness and is like, I have to tell everybody about this. And usually I have one or two people that are like really excited, and everybody else is a skeptic, right? So it's my job to kind of come in and kind of debunk all the myths, really define what mindfulness is and what it isn't, and then make it as practical as possible so that they can really incorporate it every single day in their personal lives, but also in their professional lives. So what I normally do is a variety of things. I either, sometimes I just go in and I work with corporate executives and with different levels of the organization, like one-on-one or in small groups, and we do just simple things like actually taking people through a meditation practice. A lot of times I do a lot of interactive workshops, which include a lot of like self-reflection and a lot of writing, which kind of opens up a whole nother area of discussion for people, things that usually are repressed, or a lot of times people hold on to resentment, or they're passive aggressive about certain things, and that comes out at work and they're not being their best self. And then when I work with an organization as a whole, I work a lot with them on mindful strategy and on just creating a shift in the culture. And that sort of harkens back to my professional experience in organizational theory, behavior theory, and change management. So I'm able to sort of fuse the two and help organizations really create a much more mindful organization that's supported by the way that it is in structure, and also with the tools they're giving people and the standard operating procedures and expectations that they have of people.
Mm-hmm. So what is your vision for the future?
My vision for the future in terms of mindfulness, or
like you personally?
My personally? So my sort of, this is going to really sound like absolutely incredibly offensive, but my goal is to get away from people. I know that sounds horrible because everyone thinks I am a very gregarious people, and I love people, and I love to be surrounded by people, but I have this like kind of personality where I retreat and I sort of emerge,
recharge,
and then I retreat and I emerge, so my goal is really to sort of to be somewhere that's near the water, somewhere super beautiful, that's like either, my son's going to be going to college in 2 years, and so depending on where he ends up, like if he's in Hawaii, maybe I'll be an island over.
You're only going to give him schools to look at in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I see where this is going.
Well, if he's on the East Coast,
or...
we'll go to like the Caribbean somewhere. So that's kind of always been my goal, is to spend a great portion of my time, at least 6 months a year, somewhere in the Caribbean or somewhere like in a really tropical setting where it's not overpopulated, and where I can just really focus on writing. I can focus on creating a lot of content, because there's just a lot happening in here, and I like to to write, and I want to obviously publish a book.
Yeah, you're writing a book now, right?
I am.
It's so exciting.
But see, so life happens. So I've already pushed back my deadline 3 times, and so I'm sort of waiting for the summer so I can get writing again. So it's just it's this I would like to be able to just kind of be able to sit down and have like a schedule for 6 months in theory, and then kind of re-emerge into the real world, if you will, like come back here.
Yeah, I think that's great. I totally get that.
That's my goal. So
I'll meet you on the other side of that island, wherever
that is. That works. Don't come to my side.
Right. So another thing I wanted to ask, you have a couple things coming up.
Yeah.
So we mentioned already Sundays, Hollywood Beach. Where exactly can people find you there on the beach?
They can find me on A1A and Sheridan, which is right in front of North Beach Park. You just take Sheridan all the way down until you're like basically close to the water, and you just park there, and you'll find a tribe of people on the beach.
That's at 8:30?
It's at 8:30-ish.
Yeah.
Because this is South Florida, so nobody ever shows up on time anyways, and yeah.
And then tonight, I'm really excited. We have a really fun, well, she has a really fun activity that I'm going to tonight. Let's talk about that just for a hot minute.
Okay.
Balanced buzz.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so original, people. Pay attention.
So I love craft beer. I love bourbon. I love scotch. I basically love, you know, alcohol. I know that sounds terrible. In moderation, of course. Everything in moderation. So, you know, when I sort of became a certified mindfulness instructor, and I started to be a part of different communities, obviously communities of yogis and people that are in this health and wellness, and the stigma, you know, is that once you kind of become this person that people look up to, that you have to forego all these other things that you like, that are considered or perceived to be bad. And so a lot of the people that I know, and there's no judgment, like it's what works for them, they don't drink anymore. They don't drink alcohol. They just don't, you know, they, for whatever reason, they have like all these stigmas that are attached to it. I just really couldn't bear the thought of not being able to go out and have like a pint with somebody, or, you know, at the end of a work week, if you will, on a Friday, having like a Manhattan on the rocks or whatever, because I love it, and I like also the social interaction of having a great bottle of wine with friends, you know. So I started like looking more into a lot of other people who felt the same way. They're in this space, and I came upon a book by Lodro Rinsler. It was in New York, and it's called The Buddha Walks into a Bar. And I was like, oh my God, I found like my kindred spirit. I love this. And he talks about really how you know, this modern mindfulness where you could be a mindful person and be a mindful teacher, and he happens to own like mindfulness studios and what have you all across New York, and you can essentially, you know, have one foot in that world, but still, yes, have your foot in this world too. And it doesn't mean that you have to change anything about yourself and the things that work for you. Really, it's about learning to like enhance the joys that you have in your life. So with that, Balanced Buzz was born, and it was really about teaching people how to drink mindfully. And what that means is it's actually giving thought to what happens before you drink. What's the trigger of why you're even drinking, right? Are you drinking to like subdue something? Are you drinking to forget something? Are you drinking to have fun? Are you drinking, you know, what is, so to socialize people, to connect with people? So when you kind of know the purpose of why you're drinking in the first place, that's a good start. And then it's really about learning, again, to like enjoy the basics of actually drinking, because I think sometimes we just drink, you know, especially if you think about like in American culture, you know, it's all about chug, 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 you know, like that whole image of what happens in fraternities and sororities, and really that's not what drinking is. It's more like when you think about what a sommelier does with wine, it's about like looking at the body of the drink, like sensing it, really being able to pick out the flavors and fully being able to enjoy with all of your senses and reconnect with the beverage of your choice. And you could do that, by the way, with anything. There's mindful eating classes. You could do it with coffee. You could do it with, you know, a raisin, which we'll do tonight. That's how we're going to start our practice. So there's, so fun. Yeah, all these different, it's really just things that are applicable in many other areas of our life.
So that's going to be at 6 p.m. tonight over at Tarpon River Brewery here in Fort Lauderdale. It's also a newer brewery, so that'll be fun to check out.
That's owned by my friend Lisa. And her husband Julian, and my friend Adam. Yeah, I've known Lisa since preschool. So
get out! Yeah. Oh, that's so neat. I love it. I love Fort Lauderdale. I really do. You know, it's a lot of really great people that are wave makers. That's why we do these conversations by water, so that you all get a chance to meet these wonderful people who are doing really cool things and helping us to live a better life.
Thank you, and thanks for all you do. Thanks for bringing awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love this. This is so much fun.
Awesome.
So we're going to put those links down below. If you have any questions, feel free to also ask them down below, and we'll make sure we get to those. And I've had so much fun chatting with you today, Shelly.
See you tonight so much for a flight of beer.
I'll be there, and I hope to see you all there. Thanks again for joining us. Conversations by Water. Woo!